What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of First Date Unsolved. Today, I am using a new microphone, courtesy of Mr. First Date Unsolved. It was a Christmas gift. It looks pretty fancy. I'm not entirely sure what the quality with this one will be versus the quality of the other one. Uh, some of you may know that I've had issues with the headset for a while. There are some episodes that there's some static and noise. You have all made sure to point that out to me very politely, by the way, so thank you for that. But yeah, I have a new setup. It comes with this little box. It has like sound effects built into it already. So yeah, I will promise I won't use them too much. Uh, that could probably get on someone's nerves. But yeah, I have a new mic, new setup. It comes with a pop filter, which I have on it, and it's kind of hard to see over to read my script, but we'll make do, right? But with all that banter out of the way, today we're going to be talking about a missing person from Delaware. 32-year-old Benjamin Archer was last seen in Delaware City on March 2nd, 2016. He disappeared from DuPont State Park and hasn't been seen or heard from since. At approximately 6 a.m. on March 2nd, again 2016, Benjamin walked away from his home, which is about a mile away from the park. His brother and stepfather found him a few hours later in DuPont State Park, reportedly barefoot and shivering. He wouldn't leave. Even after speaking to his mother on the phone, she tried to convince him to come home, and he told her no, he needed to stay and bless the park. According to his mom, Mickey, Ben had gotten into holistic healing, herbs, music, and meditation, so the practice of grounding himself was somewhat normal, which could explain the bare feet. But it's March. It's still really cold at that time, and he was visibly shivering. He also liked to push himself physically and was into the teachings of Wim Hof, who praises the benefits of the cold and learning to breathe in the cold. He's a Dutch uh, creator or you know not spokesperson, but he's Dutch. That's all I know. I know he's Dutch. I read into him a little bit. I've tried doing cold showers myself. Well, it's not for the weak. But yeah, so he was into the teachings of Wim Hof, and this barefoot shivering behavior could have been alarming to most, but it wasn't completely out of the ordinary for people close to Archer. When Mickey visited the park a short time later, Benjamin was nowhere to be found. She left behind some extra clothing items for him, as well as boots, and hoped he would return to find them and put them on. The family did circle back to the park again that evening before sunset to look for Benjamin, only to find the clothing still there, but the boots were gone, and so was Ben. Mickey, or Tiz as she calls herself, was very gracious when I contacted her about Benjamin. She initially expressed some apprehension because she had an unsavory experience with a podcast in the past, but she did agree to answer my questions about her son once I explained my intentions. The privacy of Tiz and her family are crucial to her exact words, so I will do my best storytelling today with that in mind. All right, so let's get into Benjamin. Benjamin Morse Archer was born on February 21st, 1984. As a child, Tiz described her son as being very affectionate, active, and hilarious. One of Tiz's favorite memories is of a time when Ben was 3. Tiz's oldest daughter was off at school, so it was just her and Benjamin at home. The pair sat at the kitchen table having breakfast, and the early morning sun shone through the window and lit his white blonde hair. He looked up and smiled at her, an especially charming smile with missing teeth and raspberry jam smeared lips. "Mommy," he said very seriously, his voice almost hushed, "you are so beautiful." Not beautiful, beautiful. Quote, "He hugged me a lot and loved to snuggle. He kept me on my toes because he was fast and agile." He was the kind of kid that kept to himself and really honed in on the things that interest him the most. Ben was incredibly artistic. He could solve a Rubik's Cube puzzle in 2 minutes, and he played at least two different instruments. He began playing the piano at 13, and in a few years, he played so well and learned so much that his teacher had nothing to teach him anymore. He was so talented that he even began writing his own compositions and posting them on YouTube. Benjamin has two brothers and three sisters and was a loving and compassionate brother to all of them. One day, he and his youngest brother, Joe, were outside playing when Joe threw a baseball right into Ben's nose and broke his glasses. It was totally an accident, and Ben knew that. So instead of getting angry or wailing in pain like most people would do, like I would do, Ben just kept saying, "Wow, Joe, great hit," even with blood streaming down his face. When Archer was 12, we're going to backtrack a little bit from 13. When Ben was 12, his mother would marry a not so nice guy, and that ended up creating havoc in everyone's lives for years to come. Ben would move in with his dad and stepmother at the age of 13, and this is when Tiz tried to make her escape. While Tiz fled an abusive husband, Ben's dad took advantage of the situation and gained full custody of Ben. I don't have a lot of details on that. Again, Tiz is like the privacy is very important. And when I say took advantage, I don't know the details, so I don't want to say that to sound too harsh, but it's kind of, it's what happened. He took advantage of the fact that Tiz couldn't focus on a custody battle or whatnot, and he did get full custody. And again, keeping everyone's privacy in mind, I won't be sharing all of the details that Tiz revealed to me. We'll just say that she really went through hell, and her kids had a pretty rough time too. She lost everything at one point and had to work very, very hard to get it all back. When she met her current husband, Ben was 17, and they got to see each other a lot more often. He went to college in Edinburgh, Scotland, and he loved it there. Ben did. Tiz said Ben even thrived there, but when his stepmother passed away, Ben came home to help his father handle the family business. Ben then transferred to Ohio State for a year, and after that is when he began to travel in 2015. Okay, sorry, I had to switch back to the other microphone. Don't tell Mr. First Date. I'll have to mess with that one some more, but I was saying things and the words were cutting out. The letters were cutting out. I don't know. I'll mess with it. Anyway, so it did seem that Ben liked to travel a lot, or at least in a certain period of his time is when he traveled a lot. Because if you check out Tiz's website under 1000skies.org, you can see photos taken by Ben, some of which include photos of the trip he took in 2015 across the United States. Some photos are also of DuPont State Park, which is the same place where he disappeared from. Under 1000 Skies has a tab dedicated to Ben and his disappearance. The page is called Missing Benjamin and is essentially a blog with frequent updates that started on March 5th, 2016, so 3 days after he was last seen. The posts are peppered with updates on Ben's case and thoughts from Tiz. There are a lot of motivational quotes, mantras, and photos, as well as comments from people who were following Benjamin's disappearance. One update from May 20th, 2016, stated that a neighbor informed Ben's brother Joe that he was fairly certain he saw Ben several weeks after he went missing. According to the neighbor, he saw Archer, quote, about a month ago, so that would put the sighting approximately around mid-April. This man described the person he saw as clean-shaven, well-dressed, and explained that the man looked good overall. Quote, I said hello, he said hello. That's about it, end quote. Now, before you go getting all fired up and wonder why the hell this guy didn't tell Ben's family sooner, he did apologize and he let them know that he didn't realize Archer was still missing. You see, Tiz began placing missing flyers of Ben up not long after he never returned home. The posters would go up, and not long after, they would be ripped down. Every time Tiz put a flyer up around town, the next day, they had been removed. To this day, she's not sure who was responsible for this, But if there's no posters hanging, you'd assume the person was found. So this neighbor, wasn't aware that Ben was still gone. Another sighting of Ben also happened at the library near Tiz's home, which Ben frequented. This encounter took place just 4 days after police searched the park for Ben, when Tiz was hanging up her posters, and the librarian working at the time mentioned she thought she saw that guy on the poster. This librarian was a new employee and didn't know Archer personally, but she was certain she saw him in the library, but that led nowhere, obviously, because he's still gone. Ben did suffer from severe social anxiety. Some family suggested that the blog and social media posts might have embarrassed him due to all of the fuss. And it was proposed that Benjamin may have meant to come home that day he was last seen, but with all the police activity, confusion, and worry, he might have been, again, too embarrassed and found someplace else to go. I would even go as far as to say that Benjamin could have been the person taking down the posters that were being put up. And, that makes sense to me, because if he doesn't want attention on him, if it's embarrassing, he's going to rip them down. He's not going to want anyone to see them. That's just my personal theory, though. We don't know who was taking them down. At the time of his disappearance, Benjamin didn't have a phone, didn't have any identification or money on him, and shortly before he vanished, Ben and his mother were having a chat when he stopped what he was talking about and said, "Mom, don't worry, I'll come back." When she asked him what he meant, he just chuckled and shook his head. Also, he destroyed his phone and deleted all of his social media presence, including his YouTube compositions. And when I say he destroyed his phone, Tiz explained he broke his iPhone in half. Don't even know how someone would go about doing that, but he split it in half. So this leads one to believe that the young man had some intentions on at least taking a brief sabbatical. I mean, why not? He's done it before. Tiz remembers one time Ben went off and didn't check in for roughly 5 months. He was off, on a spiritual journey or whatever, and didn't get in touch with anyone. So I think that was his intention again this time. I've read on multiple sources that Archer was in an accident before he vanished and required some medical attention. I asked Tiz about this because I just see it everywhere, and I wanted to know the significance of this accident. She let me know that her son was in a serious car accident out in Wyoming just after Christmas in 2015. His SUV was cut off in a snowstorm by a tractor trailer, and his vehicle flipped 3 times. His truck was obviously totaled, and he suffered a pretty good bonk on the head, so he had it checked out. Miraculously, he walked away unscathed for the most part, and this is when he kind of decided to head back home to Delaware. At first, I didn't think this accident really had anything to do with Ben leaving, but then I found out that he admitted to his mom that this experience really made him look at life differently. And if you've ever been in a pretty bad car accident, you would understand that. As part of my interview process, I always ask family members what their experience with law enforcement was like as they go through these ordeals. Tiz explained that the police were very, very helpful in the beginning. They took Ben's disappearance very seriously, even though they couldn't issue a gold alert because there are very specific criteria for that. They did, however, use helicopters. They brought in dogs to the park and infrared just in case Ben had fallen or was in the river for some reason. After Ben's dad got involved and talked to police, that's when things all changed. It's unclear what exactly Mr. Archer said to the authorities, but Tiz was accused of not being completely upfront and truthful by the chief of police. Whatever Ben's father told police really threw a wrench into the investigation and caused major delays in listing Ben as a missing person. It took the help of a retired homicide detective from NamUs.gov who was Tiz's caseworker. That caseworker kept calling police and finally got Ben listed. According to Tiz, the cops kept telling me, quote, "He'll be home when the money runs out," end quote. Tiz never did find out what her ex told police or what that meant, so she can only speculate, just like the rest of us. In my research, I found one other podcast that featured Ben's case. The Unfound podcast actually interviewed Tiz, and the episode was posted in January of 2021. I did listen to the over 90-minute coverage and did learn a few details that I did think were important to include in my reporting. I can't say for sure if this is the podcast that Tiz had a negative experience with, because I didn't press her on that subject, but that episode is out there as well if you want to listen to it. I took whatever from that episode that I thought was useful and included it here, so you're not necessarily missing out on anything, but again, it's there if you want to hear it. So, as we wrap up, at the time of his disappearance, Benjamin was wearing gray yoga pants and a green and white striped polo shirt. He may have been wearing rubber unlined camouflage print boots, which are the boots his mom left. And he is described as having blonde hair, brown eyes, and stands 6 foot tall, or 6'1", and weighs 165 pounds. I am going to share the missing poster that Tiz was putting up. I'm also going to share photos of Archer, as I always do. And I really can't help but think that Ben fully had the intention on, again, taking a sabbatical, going off, soul searching, being by himself, whatever you want to call it. And he absolutely intended on coming home. Now, whether he's still out there and he's still doing his thing, or if something bad happened to him and he's not able to come home, that's where the real question is for me. I know his mom holds on to the hope that he will keep his promise and he will come home. I'm sure the rest of his family feels that way as well. He has at least 2 nieces, I believe, who he needs to meet. He has family out there who miss him, are worried about him, and just want him to come home. If you have any information regarding Benjamin or his disappearance, please contact the Delaware City Police Department at 302-836-6344. Thank you so much for listening today. We need to get Ben found, get Ben brought home. And guys, if you thought nothing ever happened here, you thought wrong.